What a special opportunity to get my two guests in the same place at the same time. While the focus of the conversation was how a married couple can work well together outside of the home, I definitely walked away with a lot of advice for how to work well together inside the home as well. With over 2 decades of marriage and friendship in the rearview mirror, plus a wealth of experience in working with people, marriages, and organizations, this episode can only enrich the way you work with and influence the people in your world, especially your significant other. Without further ado, let's jump in. My friends, thank you for joining me on this podcast. I wonder if we could start off by each of you introducing yourselves and giving us a sense of who you are. Who's going first?
Well, I'm Frank Teres, and this is my beloved esposita, Teresa. We've been married 26 years, have 6 kids, 2 grandkids, and we work together to serve our community in any way possible, mainly through parenting education, leadership coaching, homeless ministry, and pastoring a church.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm Teresa. I'm not sure who Frank has been married to for 26 years, but we have almost been married for 25 years. So there's, I'm not sure. That. That's okay. I'm guessing that extra year is just the bonus.
No, I was telling somebody this morning how long we've been together, and so 26 was stuck in my head.
Yeah.
Good save.
Good save. And what does esposita mean? What is that?
Esposita?
Yeah, are we supposed to?
Spouse.
Am I? Oh, okay.
My beautiful spouse.
So I'm not supposed to refer to you as esposita. That's just kind of what Frank.
It's like my pet
Might
name.
be a little weird,
as well as Butamus Prime, and
I just call him Frank.
Yeah, she really calls me the Big Bible Daddy.
I do not. A lot of people do, but I'm not one of them.
Do people really call you the Big Bible Daddy? I know that's
Yes.
your email address.
They do.
Oh.
In fact, he used to get introduced that way at church sometimes when he was doing announcements and things.
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah.
So you just recently together started up a nonprofit. Could you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so it's been about 3.5 years. It's called Legacy Family and Leadership. And our goal is really just to create legacies of resilience in our community, right? So we're wanting to help families break any generational cycles that are leading to abuse, to hurt, to trauma, anything that might be holding their family back. That might be anything from generational homelessness, poverty, cycles of abuse that have happened in their family already, just, not being able to feel like they can move forward, because it's going to be really hard to break any cycle, something that you've grown up with, it's hard to be that person that puts an end to those things. So that's our biggest, mission is to be there for families, and help them find a way to kind of break that chain and be the person that makes a new legacy for their family.
Yeah, a lot of it happens to the fact that, number one, there is another option for me. I mean, I don't have to live like this. So there's that hope that we infuse or we share with them. Not only the hope of the gospel, but just the hope of like something brighter futures ahead, as well as helping them build support and a community of support so that they have someone they can call on when they're in a time of need.
Mm-hmm. So you said the hope of the gospel. It sounds like there's a faith, kind of a Christian faith component to to this program as well. Is that?
So that's the program, right? So that's who we are. It's who we will always be. That's how we live.
Yeah.
The program itself is actually not a Christian organization, a program, because we work very deeply with families that are involved with child welfare, people that might have their kids in foster care or mandated to take parenting classes. So all of our classes and our programming, our organization as a whole is non-sectarian because we want to make sure that we're able to make an impact in the lives of all families, right? And not that we would ever judge somebody based on, their religion, but we want to make sure that we have access to continue to help families. So we've made a very deliberate choice to not be a Christian organization because we don't want that to stand in the way of the people that we can service, right?
Yeah. What made me want to talk to the Matzes today was the fact that you are doing this together. And I thought an interesting story that I'd want to hear, and maybe others would want to hear, is how married couples now a married couple does a lot of things together, family, but especially when you create something outside of the family together. I'm curious, before this nonprofit, are there other, what are some other things that looking back, you've created together before starting Legacy Family and Leadership?
Yeah, well, there's a saying that says that when you get one Matt's member, you get them all.
I've read that somewhere on the internet.
Yeah. So whatever I've been doing or my wife does, or even my kids do, like we all jump in to help each other out. So whether it's planting churches and my wife coming alongside me and leading Bible studies for the women of the church, or helping me with the worship service as far as putting together slides and running the slideshow, helping me put together music for it, or whether it's helping when she was at the pregnancy care center, she would have to teach classes and we'd come alongside and do stuff together. So we've always done things together. Like that's our whole life. As far as leading something, this was kind of new. Back in 2016, 2017, probably, I went to a church planter retreat and we started looking at what would it look like to plant a church in Grants Pass, and how has God strengthened us? How has he built us? What opportunities has he given us? What doors has he opened to plant a church? And as we started putting things together about wanting to see thriving families, thriving marriages, thriving leaders in our community, that was our access to be able to start a church. So we just started dreaming, and then we put it on hold to go help a church in Central Point. We put it on hold when we came back to Grants Pass and started helping another church plant campuses. But it was something always there we wanted to do. And one weekend we were headed to the coast and talking about that dream. And we realized we don't need to start a church to do this. We can do this now. So by the time we got all the way to Crescent City and checked in, we had already had a plan in place. And we didn't even eat dinner. We just sat down with a laptop and started putting stuff together. And by the time dinner was over, we had a whole nonprofit launched.
Yeah, I remember people asking us like, how was your vacation? What did you do? And I was like, oh, we started a business. We totally took a vacation. One thing I want to say is leading up to this organization, I have always kind of worked in the background, helped Frank wherever we were, always been a volunteer, serving. But when we went to that conference where we were working on becoming church planters, that was the first place where I really felt a part of the team, if that makes sense. They saw us as a team and not as a pastor and his wife. And it was very uplifting and encouraging to be seen as a really important part of that team. And that, I think, really gave us what we needed to move forward, to start an organization, for me to feel like I don't have to be kind of that background player, but that I can actually be a leading, part of the trajectory. This all kind of came out of my vision to start something, which was, I kind of had always put those on the back burner, if that makes sense, because I was just, being the good pastor's wife and helping him with his ministries, and really being able to feel like I could be a co-member with him and an equal partner. Not that he ever made me feel like I was an equal partner, but that was on my own. But just really feeling the ability to do that was very liberating. And that's why we were able to get things moving.
Yeah, that kind of sense. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, we actually, I was asked to teach at a conference on personality assessments and stuff. And Teresa and I did it together. Like, we had literally 30 minutes to plan what we were going to do. And we did it. And it was like the perfect conference session that we've ever done. Like, it was awesome. And everyone's like, wow, you guys worked really hard on putting that together. And we're like, we did it in 30 minutes. And we spoke for an hour and a half, and it was awesome. And everyone was such encouraging. And I didn't know Teresa had a dream to do that full time with me, but she did. And she said something about that as well.
Yeah, we'd always gone to conferences where a husband and a wife team would teach together. And I'd always thought, oh, that's really cool. But I didn't necessarily consider that a gift that I had. I knew that my husband had the gift of teaching. And I would take tests and it would say that I had the gift of teaching or the gift of shepherding. And I'm like, oh, no, that's not me. But being able to teach with my husband is such an interesting dynamic. And I really love it. And I think that really sets us apart in organizations that do parenting classes and leadership and workshops. We're the only husband and wife team in this area, and it gives our classes such a huge impact to be able to hear from both sides and not just, often it's just a female teaching a parenting class. Sometimes they're not even parents. They've just been trained to teach a class, and so we have a lot more
Depth.
Yeah. Just, it's really neat to see that.
Yeah. So what are some things that you've seen within your own marriage, but maybe even as you've observed others that makes that successful? What can help make that successful? Now, I'll read between the lines and I see that you have almost 26 years of marriage, or almost 26 years of life together. I would say that's probably one thing there that's going for you is the longevity of kind of knowing each other. But I don't know, what would talk a bit about what helps make that a successful venture as a married couple to start something new together outside of the home.
There's a lot of things going on. Number one, we're best friends. Number two, our personalities are almost identical at how we think and work. We're gifted differently. We got different gifts, but our personalities mesh so well that there's hardly ever any conflict. And usually when one person feels strong about something, the other person usually goes with it. So we don't have any conflicts that way. And interesting enough, my wife is probably 10 times smarter than me on so many things. And that's kind of what drew her to me, not only her beauty, but we were in a church youth group setting and we were doing like the difference between modern Christian music and singing the old hymns in church, like which debate.
It was a debate, yeah.
And so Teresa and I got put on the same team and she did all the work and she was super smart and she was educated. And I was like, dude, I want to marry this girl. This is going to be awesome. And we ended up dating and getting married, and it's proven true. She's not only my biggest supporter, but I learned so much from her because she's way more intelligent than I am.
So what I hear in that is also a willingness to let someone else's strengths play.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and to admit your own weaknesses and how there's a need that can be created and it's not threatening to you when she steps up and does her thing well.
Oh yeah. Even simple things like making graphics and slides and pictures and stuff. I can sit on a computer and I can do it. It'll take me about 4 hours, but I can talk to Teresa, tell her what I want, and she's got it done in 5
minutes, not hours.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Yeah, like it's impressive.
I know. I think there's one of the dynamics that's been really helpful for this venture is technically I'm the only employee of the nonprofit at this time. We are trying to bring on another employee. But as the director, I have a different kind of weight in the organization. Frank does a lot. He teaches with me. He volunteers. He's there for the board meetings. But I'm kind of the end, when it comes to what's going to happen. We also have a really phenomenal board of directors that is super supportive, very bought in, very connected and involved. And so it's not just on us, if that makes sense. We have this board that we can lean on very heavily. They support us in all of our events and our classes and our fundraising. They're extremely helpful. So I think being that I'm the director and it's kind of like, okay, the buck stops here, is very different than, any other relationship in our marriage. But he has his own job, right? He has a job where he does his own thing and he just volunteers for Legacy, which I think kind of makes that dynamic a little bit better because we're not that we couldn't be equal in it, but I think it would be a little bit harder, to kind of make a deciding factor if we disagreed on something. Whereas where it stands now, it's either my choice or it's the board's choice. But I value everything that he inputs. I value the time that he donates. There are a lot of things that he is so much better at than I am. When it comes to asking people for money, Frank is way better at that, right? Making that ask. And he's way more connected in the community than I am, just because I'm a lot more introverted than he is, right? So when it's having to go out and actually talk to people and bring them in, he's a lot better at that. And I will wholeheartedly default to him on those things.
So if I was taking notes there's two things I hear, and you tell me if this is right or not. But as far as things that can help with the success of starting something together. One that you see is in the board of directors and maybe in life, that's just having people that are kind of cheerleaders to and helping support kind of this venture. And that could take that could be friends that are kind of have a buy-in to your marriage maybe, but that board of directors is a good whatever image you want to use, your support system. And then also you have, if both of you were 100% right now, at least at the stage of this nonprofit, 100%, this is your bread and butter, this is your thing, it might feel a little bit crowded, and it's actually a benefit that at least at this stage of this nonprofit that, Frank, you kind of have something else that's also working in your life, and you can kind of give each other space to have some lanes, I suppose,
right,
in the midst of that. Am I hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think very clear, defined rules is very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the same with our marriage. There's like zero issue ever. There's never any conflict because we understand our roles and we understand each other's strengths. And I think it carries over to the nonprofit, carries over to the church, carries over to everything that we're doing.
Yeah. I've heard others say, well, you conflict is where you grow, and so maybe conflict looks different or kind of how you, or if you guys kind of figured out kind of patterns for how to settle those points of disagreement. Is it kind of just that knowing of your limitations?
Right. So every marriage obviously has conflict, right? But there's different types of conflict. There's the conflict that you can overcome, difference of opinions, things that are solvable. And then there's what's considered non-solvable conflict, something that's always going to be a bone of contention in your marriage. And you have to learn how to live with that, to work with it, to be okay with it. And every marriage is going to have those things as well. So it's not to say that there is absolutely no conflict in our marriage. It's more that any of those issues that are unsolvable conflicts, we've learned how to be okay with them, right? To not continue to grate on something, to not pull up the past, to not harbor, ill will against each other, but just to be okay to disagree on certain things. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, right? And the longer that you're married, the more time you spend together, I feel like those unsolvable conflicts tend to melt away. And the little things, I don't know that we maybe even register them as conflict because we don't allow them to get under our skin. We don't allow them to really create tension or contention against each other.
If there's anything else that comes to mind as far as, if there is someone listening and they're wanting to start a business or nonprofit or some kind of venture together with their spouse, if there's anything else that comes up as far as hey, think about this, or some to help make that successful, that comes up, do chime in again on that. But what are some challenges that either you face together as a couple, kind of in this together, starting something together, or maybe some challenges that you've seen in other couples that would be kind of good things to share. Not that challenges are inherently bad, but just kind of keep your eyes open for what kind of things.
Yeah, definitely work-life balance, right? Being able to actually turn it off when you're at home is really hard. Not looking at your phone all day long to check for emails or turning your computer on, sitting at the kitchen table. It's hard to have that really good boundaries and balance of when we're working and when we're not working.
So you would say it's good to let work be work,
yes,
and to try to turn that off when you come home.
Definitely, but we have not mastered that in any sense.
And why is that? Talk a bit about why why that would be tricky. Why would it be good to grow more in doing that?
Well, I think it's tricky for us for a couple reasons. One of them is because even though we have 5 adult children, we also have a toddler at home still, and I often have to work my schedule around my toddler. And so sometimes I'm working at odd hours. And we also teach classes in the evening or on the weekends, right? So getting 40 hours in sometimes looks like being off in the middle of the day and working in the evening. And then Frank is working a full-time job and then volunteering his time for us, right? So he's working at odd hours as well. And so that can cause a lot of, working through family dinner, or it's time to put the toddler to bed and one of us is working, so sometimes being able to mesh those schedules so that there's a really good balance of on and off can be really difficult. And I think we try to balance it through really syncing our calendars, keeping really well detailed calendars so that we know when each other has appointments, when we're working, when we're not working. And trying to hold each other to that is a little difficult sometimes, though.
Yeah. I would say as far as working together, you got to trust each other and you got to trust each other's judgment on things and direction. And you got to lead with humility with each other.
So
because I can't let my ego get in the way.
So what would be something that would challenge, like if I was starting something with my wife, what would be what's I'm seeing that as a suggestion for what would make it successful. Where do you see that as a challenge?
I've seen people, whether starting with their best friend, starting a business, or their spouse, of wanting to be the first among equals and it causing issues in relationships. When you're doing something like this, man, you got to let the ego go and you got to trust each other and trust the process and work with each other and let go of some of your preferences.
Yeah. And why? Like, what if I have the better idea? Like, why should I let go of that? And
because you're wanting the team to work well.
Okay.
So part of my personality is kind of like a peacemaker. I like to see things function well and supported and stuff. And so if you have a better idea and you want to do something, I've seen teams split up to go do their own thing. And it, I think, causes damage to the overall first vision that you had. So we work together real well on stuff, and certain things I would want to see happen. It's just not yet. And I'm okay waiting on that because my wife's got another vision for what she wants to do. And I 100% support it.
Yeah.
So you got to support your spouse if you're going to do this, or your business partner when you're working together as a team.
And it sounds like keeping that vision kind of forefront to help navigate the little things that come up as far as when to make way. And
so I get ideas all the time in my head, and it could really cause some vision drift. And my wife is very good about, okay, it's not in our vision for what we want to do. That's great if you want to do that, but like that's not going to happen.
Well, it's not going to happen under legacy.
Yeah. So like one of them is, I have, not only do I have a love for my community and the people and the leaders and the marriage and the parents, but I have a love for the church, the small local church community as well. And I want to see churches thrive. They need help. A lot of the ones I work with. And so I'm going to start a consulting business. And I thought, well, let's make it part of Legacy Family Leadership, and we can have a church consulting kind of arm of it. And my wife's like, no, it doesn't fit the vision of what we're doing.
Right. We have a very clear mission and vision, and I think it's really important to stick to that. Nonprofits can drift away from their mission really easily. And it's one thing to decide as a group with your board that you want to alter or change your mission, but mission drift happens so easily and so quietly that you might not even recognize that you're going away from that.
What's the worst case scenario of that? Why don't you want your mission to slowly form into something else?
Well, slowly forming into something else is okay if you're aware of it, right? One of the things that we do yearly is we get together and do a strategic planning with our board of directors. We set out very clear plans, very clear goals, very clear line items that meet up with our vision. This is who we are. This is who we've told our donors that we are and people that are supporting us. This is the passion that they have given their money to be able to support, right? These are the people that we've put out there that we are going to help and that we're going to offer services to. And that when you then begin to open maybe a program that doesn't fit under that, you're using money that people have given you in good faith in a way that they didn't give it to you for, right? So you want to be really careful of that. If you're going to make a shift in your vision, you need to be really open and very deliberate with it so that the people that are partnering with you and funding you and supporting you, they know what you stand for. And if you can't have integrity in what you stand for as a nonprofit, you're going to have a really hard time getting people to stand behind you.
Yeah. So that's kind of the stakes as far as mission drift. And so when
Mhm.
you're together and you're having ideas and having to kind of, again, hold that mission front and center together. And
Right.
Yeah.
what are there any, you've shared a bit about some of the habits that you've created
Mhm.
to stay on point together. One of them is calendaring. I've seen your calendar, Frank, and your calendar is a lot more colorful than my calendar. And so I can see a lot of intention in that. And so to hear that you share that you have a shared calendar, you have a sense of where, each other are at different points. What are some other, any other habits that whether it's personally, or whether it's habits that you have together, that help support, this working well together, kind of outside of the home?
Yeah. So we try to make it a point to at least every quarter get away, for maybe every 6 months, get away overnight together without any kids or anybody with us
Or computers.
or computers,
Mhm.
because we tend to work. If we take a computer with us, like the time we launched Legacy,
Right.
like we'll work. So we don't take the computers with us.
You don't want to launch another nonprofit
Yeah.
right now.
Not at
leave
all.
the computer at
Yeah.
home.
So we try to just get away at least for an overnight. We go on a lot of drives together where we can just sit and in quiet and process and talk along the way whenever we want to.
Are there natural moments in your week that tend to have space, or are those kind of like opportunistic? Like,
Yeah,
hey,
we
we
have
got
to be very intentional with that, right? It's not going to happen if we don't force the time almost,
Mhm.
because both of our calendars are extremely full and extremely busy. So we have to literally calendar each other in and be intentional to make sure that we're taking that time.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sometimes it's kind of like, hey, we have nothing planned, which doesn't happen very often. Nothing planned this Saturday. Let's go for a drive.
Mhm.
And we'll just get in a car with a full tank of gas and drive till we got to get gas.
It's
Yeah.
a little bit harder with a toddler. We do also have to find a babysitter, but
Mm-hmm. So I hear some intentionality, and you're also keeping your eyes open for those moments of here's a moment coming up. We know what we do when these moments come up. We go on a drive. You kind of have a sense of what options are the best options
Mhm.
to take when you have time
Yeah.
to spend together.
Absolutely. And we sneak dates often. Like we had no plans to do anything for like Valentine's Day. My meeting canceled Tuesday morning, and I ended up going to take the baby to school with Teresa. And we were going to head home for another meeting, and we decided, you know what? Let's go get breakfast.
Mm.
So just a quick little date. It was fun together, and we spent some time together afterwards. It was nice.
Mhm. Any other kind of things that you would identify as habits? And maybe it's something that you've seen in other couples that have been really helpful, that you're like, like maybe that's your thing. Maybe it's a thing that you're going to grow into. Maybe it's not your thing, but you see it works for somebody else. But are there any other kind of habits that married couples can develop together?
I definitely think it's the husband washing the dishes every night. That
Yeah,
seems like a
that's-
really great habit.
Super.
I think it would be super helpful for our success as an organization.
Do you think that's kind of some mission drift right there, Frank?
That's mission trip. Sure.
I don't see it. No, I think it would be really good example for the parents in our classes. If
Yeah.
that's hard to follow, I
Yeah.
don't think he can come up
He's
with
not-
anything.
Because I love Jesus, I like to pray.
There we go.
Praying together, talking through things together, just ideas or like what ifs, understanding each other's dreams to hear what's going on. Those are all like good habits to have.
Mhm.
Reading the Bible together.
I think we're also very in tune with each other and our breaking points. So when one of us is kind of hitting a wall or hitting a place where we've done too much, we've gone too far, we haven't rested enough, the other is generally pretty adept at noticing that and, taking the toddler and saying, hey, why don't you go take a nap? Or Frank will say, hey, I'll watch the kid. Why don't you go window shop? Or, whatever it is. Giving each other space to have a little bit of downtime alone is super important, and really paying attention to each other, because I maybe might not notice that I'm hitting burnout as soon as Frank will notice that. If that,
And vice versa. One of my favorite things to do is keep the toddler and the grandkids,
Mhm.
so Teresa and my daughter can go do something together. Yeah, I love it. I get to hang out with the kids, and they get to get refreshed. And my other thing that I like is because my wife's in tune to me as well. When I hit my breaking point or I'm like lethargic, she'll be like, "Hey, have you eaten anything today?" I'm like, "No, I haven't." And so like she'll get me some food and I'm all better.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I don't notice those things.
So I hear a lot of words like listening, hearing, noticing, and you've been open about that you've spent a lot of time together, you're best friends, you have a sense of being in sync together. Are there, if someone's like, man, like that's just not me and my wife, I'd love to grow in that. I'd love to hear myself using language like that, like next year, a year, a couple of years from now. How does someone grow in listening more, being able to notice when your other is at that breaking point, having a sense of how you can serve them in that space? How do you grow in that?
I would say spend time together.
Yeah.
Go to our website, legacygp.org, and sign up for some marriage mentoring.
Okay. So you guys actually get into some things like that.
We
Okay.
do. I think Frank often tells guys you need to invest in a PhD in your wife. And the same goes for, women. If you are focused on your own desires, your own needs, your own aspirations, your own goals, you're not going to be seeing what your partner is doing, needing, or wanting. So marriage has to be 100% both ways. And I'm 100% focused on him and he's 100% focused on me. It can't be 50-50. It has to be 100% both ways.
Yeah, man. So we're pouring on the love languages, all 5 of them, to each other as much as we can.
Yeah.
Paying attention to each other and knowing that, number one, God gave her to me. She's my wife. I love her more than anything in the world. And so not taking offense to things, I think, is huge as far as working together as a team. And knowing that she loves me the same way I love her. And so looking past things, not taking offense or holding a grudge and letting go of those things is huge in forming a good marriage and a good team. There's like different parts of you in your life, whether you're nurturing or getting nurtured by somebody, or whether you're being a bully or a toddler or a victim?
A victim.
So you go through these different parts of your day of who you are. Sometimes I'm nurturing my wife. Sometimes she's nurturing me. Sometimes I'm being a bully. And my wife will call me out. "Hey, you're acting like a bully." And I'll do the same thing to her. "Hey, you're kind of stabby right now." And it's kind of, "Oh, geez, I should stop that." Or she'll tell me, "Hey, you're acting like a toddler," when I'm in my victim box. Yeah. And so being able to call each other out on that is very helpful. Not because she doesn't love me. She's telling me.
Takes a lot of trust, though.
Yeah. She's not like picking on me and saying, "Hey, quit acting like a toddler or a martyr on something." It's kind of like, "Oh yeah, I'm not acting myself," like eat a Snickers type thing. So
yeah, what I was going to point out is empathy, I think, is one of the most important things to have within a marriage. So when we do communication classes, whether it's for parents or for partners, one of the first things we talk about is what we call love listening, right? So listening is so important, and love listening is listen, understand, and validate, right? So if you're actually listening to what somebody is saying, you're not thinking about what you're going to say in response. You're just listening to them. You're just letting that wash over you and not thinking, how am I going to respond to that? And then the understanding part is like, you're doing it really well, is, so what I'm hearing you say is, right? And repeating that back to them and letting them know, this is what I heard. Am I correct? And then validating how they feel. Even if you don't agree with them, you can still validate their feelings and be empathetic towards them. And that goes a long way. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody wants to be validated, and showing empathy to your partner is huge, right? Wow, I'm really sorry you had to deal with that today. That had to have been really hard, right? Maybe I don't think that would have been hard for me, but that was hard for you. And I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Validating that and being empathetic to that before you think about what you want to say in return is big, right? Because we don't want to think about retaliation or comebacks. We want to think about, wow, you really struggled today and I'm sorry.
Yeah, seek to understand before being understood.
Yeah.
And understanding it's not about the nail in the forehead, Josh.
Exactly. I was thinking about that video.
The nail in the forehead. Tell me about that.
There's a marriage video about the lady with a nail in the forehead. and she's complaining to her husband about this excruciating headache she has, and she keeps smacking her head and hurting more and
Ripping
snagging
all her
sweaters.
sweaters.
And all she wanted to say was validate the fact that she had a splitting headache.
And all the husband wants to do is pull the nail out, right?
Right.
So it's the fixer versus the please listen to me, where the woman just wanted him to listen and validate and hear, where all he wanted to do is like, but if you just let me pull that nail out, you'll be better.
Yeah.
And we don't always want to be fixed. Nobody wants to always be fixed, right? And so if I didn't ask to be fixed, or if I didn't ask for input or advice, just listen. And that's super important.
And sometimes it's good to ask. So sometimes my wife will complain about something, and I'll say, "Hey, are you wanting an answer, or are you just wanting to vent?" And she's like, "I just want to vent." I'm a great listener. I got great ears.
That's a good clarifying question, especially for a husband to have. Like,
Right.
Yeah. Have you, are there any kind of cautionary tales of, like you've seen these kind of scenarios happen when a husband and wife launches something together, and you're like, we don't want to go that way, and that kind of helps set a guardrail. Sometimes, we have those like, like that kind of scares me a little bit. I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, so
I want to shape up, and I want to get this right.
There is one that comes to mind. I don't actually want to talk about it because I think it's a little too public. But I think keeping egos in check is super important, right? I think Frank already talked about that a little bit. I think especially when you come from a Christian household, and Frank being a pastor, right? Sometimes the fact that I'm in charge of the organization might set off, red flags and bells to certain people. And the fact that my husband is okay with that, right? So maybe our roles within our organization are very different than our roles within our marriage. And keeping those two things separate is really important. So
totally.
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of times, part of getting your PhD in your spouse, my wife mentioned that earlier on, is people change over time. Their interests change. The things that they find pleasure in doing change. And so trying to understand that from my wife, and not like, I know people that have been married for 20 years and like, we've grown apart. I don't know them anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing now. Well, we've been very intentional about making sure that as things change, we know about it, and we're talking through things. My wife used to be huge into scrapbooking and understanding that, knowing that, and now she's not anymore. Now she's into like eating right and exercise and that kind of stuff. And I'm there right with her trying to figure it out. I'm kind of slow, but I'm there with her.
So the whole like, that person's they're no longer the person I married. Well, yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah. Like, shouldn't be static.
And,
right?
Yeah. And have you been tracking along the way? Is this a sudden revelation to you, or like, have you been, Yeah.
So not being so self-focused that you don't see the change happening in your spouse.
Is there, I'm curious if there's a question that you kind of wish I had asked you, or any thoughts that you kind of have on the subject of working well together that haven't had a spot to be put.
I think Frank's biggest attribute is that he'll say yes before asking me any clarifying questions. That if I ask him to do something or I suggest something, he always says yes right away. And then we figure it out how it's going to happen afterwards, which is really cool to have that type of a cheerleader, somebody that will, keep you motivated and not think your ideas are crazy. That sounds great, babe. How do we make that happen?
Yes is the answer. What's the question? Let's do it.
Is that something you've had to learn, or is that just kind of part of who you are? Kind of are you wired that way, or have you had to learn to say,
that way.
I'm going to say yes first, figure it out later?
I actually tell him all the time, dude, you need to say no more.
Yeah.
Not to me, but to other people.
Yeah. I think I've had friends that have had ideas, and, their spouses shoot them down all the time, and they kind of feel deflated. And I've always been like, that's a great idea. Like, how would we do that? Like, figure it out. And so for our marriage, it's never been an issue. My wife has an idea. I'm like, yes, let's do that. Let's figure out how to do it. And my mind loves doing that. I love figuring things out. I love how to implement programs and implement ideas. Launch a construction company. Let's do it. Let's figure out how to do it. Let's put the team together. We'll launch a nonprofit. Absolutely. Let's do that. We'll start another church. Okay, let's do it. So that's just me.
It's also a really cool thing to learn as your kids get older, to be able to say, yes, let's walk through that. So when your kid comes to you at 17 and says, I'm over this, as soon as I turn 18, I'm out of this house, getting my own place. Okay. All right, I'll support you in that. Let's sit down and see what it looks like. So you're not going to be graduated high school yet, so you're going to still be going to school. Well, let's look and see what does rent look like, okay? What does utilities look like, all right? What neighborhood do you want to live in? What kind of job do you need to have to support this? Can you do that while you're going to school? And walking them through the process and letting them make that decision on whether or not that's actually a good idea, instead of just saying, well, that's stupid. You're going to still be in school. You can't afford to get your own place, right? It's such a different relationship and such a different dynamic to be able to be like, okay, I'm gonna walk through this with you. Let's see if we can figure this out, right? Instead of just crushing their dreams or
That's a good word. Yeah, that's good.
So it works in all places.
Yeah, it works in all places: parenting, management, marriage.
Yeah, I guess when I hear that, just the way I'm wired, and is I get nervous. Like someone says, hey, how about we do this? And I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm already thinking through, what's this going to cost me? Is this feasible? And so I'm slow to say yes. And I'm sure my wife would love me to say yes more often. Like, yes, how can we get that going? And I'm like, whoa, I have to say no kind of before and do the feasibility study. And then I can kind of, so that's like my worst fear when I hear that, do you guys not?
Maybe start with maybe, right?
Maybe.
Our 3-year-old, that's her favorite word. She'll say, hey, mommy, can we go to the car wash? And I'll say, no, not today. She goes, no, mommy, say, think, maybe. And I'll say, okay, think, maybe. And she'll go, yes. I don't think she's learned yet that maybe often means no, but
maybe
that's okay.
Can mean no. Yeah. Okay, that's a good word. I can start working on saying, maybe, let me put a little placeholder here.
Put a pin in it. Yeah. Think about it.
So we're having this interview in February of 2023. You just referenced Valentine's Day just last week. As you guys look at 2023, is anything like in your family or in this nonprofit that you, Legacy, Family, and Leadership, that you're kind of looking forward to this year?
Well, I would say right off the bat, the thing that's most pressing is the fact we're trying to bring on another staff member. Teresa's kind of underwater with all the work and all the opportunities we have. And we've had to say no to some because we just don't have the capacity.
Yeah, we're really working on an expansion this year.
Yeah, so expanding the programming, expanding our offerings is huge. The other thing is every April is Abuse Prevention Month.
Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month.
There you go. That's why she's in charge. And by the way, she's got a way better memory than me too, which is okay.
Yeah. So April's really big for us. We do a lot of community events. We are putting on kind of a kickoff event on April 1st called Stand in the Gap, where we're going to have a kind of an art installation that'll be a walkthrough interactive installation where we'll have a representation of a family in our community. And then we're going to have the ability to see what risk factors our families face when it comes to things that might cause hurt or abuse in their family. And then we're going to look at what type of protective factors, things that we can do to help families reduce those risks. And so it's going to be very interactive, very visual for our community to be able to see those things. And we're going to also have a resource fair for families available for them to see what type of things in our community are out there for families. We're going to have a coloring contest all month long for kids in the community. We'll have some prizes. Lots of different businesses are going to be involved in, being able to be a drop-off place for those.
Pinwheel.
Yeah, we have our pinwheel gardens. We do something called Blooming a Pinwheel Garden, where you can pay to have a pinwheel garden set up either in your yard or somebody else's yard, because blue pinwheels are the symbol for Prevention Month. So we'll have roaming pinwheel gardens all month long. You'll see them throughout the city. We'll have a couple of fundraisers. We're going to have a cornhole tournament, a bunco night. We're also going to be doing a one-night exclusive class on protective factors for the community. So lots of really great stuff.
This
I think we're doing
April.
a Mod Pizza fundraiser on April 2nd, right? So tons of stuff.
So April's a big month
April's a huge
for your
month.
nonprofit.
And we're going on vacation to celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary.
We are going on vacation for our anniversary, which is, while it's imperative for me to have that employee in place before then to make sure things keep rolling while we're on vacation. And we have a great board. So
yeah, and then also the other thing in 2023 for us is this will be our third annual family game night in October.
Yeah, that's really fun. So one of our values that we teach in our parenting classes is the importance of bonding, right? And so we talk a lot about play and interacting with your kids. And so we started a couple of years ago having a big community family game night where we really take the values and the things that we teach in our class and we put it on big scale for the community. And so we have games, we have interactive things like bounce houses and, face painting, we have snacks, and then of course there's lots of prizes, right? So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
So looking for another staff member, looking to really keep the April awareness month kind of going, celebrating your wedding anniversary. So
A family game night.
Yeah.
If any listeners want to know more, go to legacygp.org. That's legacygp.org, and find out more. Find out some of the community parenting classes we offer, some marriage classes. We can even bring it to your church or your organization as well.
Right.
Yeah.
We do leadership coaching also. We have a few scholarships still available for leadership coaching right now.
Yeah. So we'll have that website in the show notes. Folks can find that. But it also, if you're, as you heard earlier in the conversation, if you are wanting to kind of grow in your togetherness, not only are your classes available, but I imagine if they contacted you guys, you probably wouldn't mind sharing some of this one-on-one, interpersonally, as it works for your schedules and your calendar.
And we do a lot of mentoring as it works and as we can fit it in.
Yeah, we do a lot of marriage mentoring and premarital counseling together.
Yeah, you guys are. I'm always astounded at the places where the Mattses are working, and you really got your presence in a lot of space. I'm very thankful for that. And thankful that you took time together. I was thinking, like, man, how often can I find the two of you in the same place outside of the home? And so, taking the time to share some of your story here on this podcast. So I really appreciate that, guys.
Thanks, Josh.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Thank
See you around the community.